Okay, waiting for James. Oh my gosh.
It
Our
works.
first try. We
Damn.
freaking nailed it. We should
All
basically
right.
become professional
This is all I'm going to do from
Instagram
now on.
people.
I think so, yeah. I think I'm just going to, I mean, if we're going to be in quarantine anyways, I'm just going to
Yeah,
quit
here
and
we
do
go.
this.
All right, and I've even got you propped up, so we're good to go. All right, all right, all right. All
Damn.
right, so what are we doing today, James? What are we doing?
All right. So, in the current situation, the climate that we're in right now, we were talking, right? And we decided, because we talk, and we
Sometimes,
thought that it would be,
occasionally.
sometimes, we thought that it would be a fantastic idea to talk about nutrition as it stands now in the current situation, this current climate, mostly because in reality, nothing really is going to change or should change with your daily habits or the type of food that you eat, your planning schedule, and things like that. The thing that will change, though, is the uncertainty of food supplies, of where you're going to go get it from, and probably not having the food that you're normally used to having. Because
Yeah.
when it comes down to, food supplies being a little bit kind of hazy right now, you might not get everything that you're normally used to getting. But does that mean that you have to completely fall off and run around in circles screaming because you don't know what to do? Probably not.
Yeah,
So we're going
exactly.
to talk, exactly, and we're going to talk today on the first of a three-part series, mostly looking at the planning aspects of your nutrition, your lifestyle right now.
Yeah. And we were talking about, framing this conversation because everything has kind of gone haywire for so many people's lives. And we don't really know how long this will go on. We're not going to touch on that because James and I were like, man, like we're not epidemiologists, we're not virologists. We're going to kind of stay in our lane. But just what James was saying about what we do have control over, we kind of wanted to try and introduce the fact that supply chains regarding food, as far as we stand right now, they're not interrupted. Like we're okay. It's just still that panic buying that is buying out a lot of these different food sources. So we kind of wanted to bring some comfort to some people that might be really concerned about that, as well as provide some alternate options to be looking for food, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be basically on whatever is available in your area. So
Yeah.
there's a
And where are
lot
you,
of things that are
James?
changing. Oh, I'm in Montreal, by the way, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah,
Montreal, Quebec,
Nicole, a
Canada. And
Canadian. One of my clients jumped on from Canada.
perfect. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, like Bree said, like we're not epidemiologists, virologists, anything like that. We do have, I think, maybe some sense in being in the health industry, but then again, that doesn't count for a whole lot because there are still people who are telling you
Right.
that you can take supplements and you will not catch this virus or help fight it off. So
Oh,
don't listen to that.
go off,
I'm
James.
not going off. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. We got 15 minutes.
Oh
I'm not
God.
doing
Yeah,
it.
we're gonna
But I
try and
will
keep
at
this
some point.
short, guys. We're gonna try and just kind of give you get straight to something
What up,
that's
Caitlin?
helpful. Yeah, because otherwise, like James and I were saying, like we get bored on these IG lives.
Oh
So
yeah. It's gonna go up.
we're gonna hop right to it. So James, what are
Do it.
you doing? Like, what's your access look like in Montreal?
So my access is not so the access to the city of Montreal is pretty good still so far. I mean, there are still a couple grocery stores that we're looking at that do get their shelves cleared.
Yeah,
But as far as food supply, it seems like they're restocking afterwards. Right
yeah,
now, bigger grocery stores or things like Costco, you might just have to wait in line outside because they're sort of not letting in as many people as they normally would. Either just so that there's no one panic buying, or maybe just because they don't want people in close proximity.
yeah,
But that's what you're going to look for right now.
yeah.
My current situation personally, probably like you, Bree, is that we came in from out of the country, so we're quarantined.
That was fun.
So yeah, so I
That's
can't leave.
scary.
So yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
this is where now we got to start making some decisions. So maybe a family member can go get it. My parents brought me
yeah,
some meat just the other day from our local butcher. Or there are food ordering services as
yeah.
well. A lot of grocery stores here deliver food.
Yeah,
What about you?
absolutely. Yeah, it's really similar. So what I've heard, I was getting a lot of third-party information from clients local here in Dallas, Texas, and then I do have some just kind of scattered around the world. So it varies a little bit, but from what I can tell, if you're going to like the larger chain grocery stores, that's where you're probably going to feel most panicked because it seems to be like they're having a little bit of a harder time staying stocked. Whereas, for example, here in Dallas, we have a local meat market, Burgundy's local. And they're doing a really good job of staying stocked. We have Farm Box Delivery, which delivers fresh produce to your door, and they're doing fine. We have
Nice.
a meal prep company, Dallas Prep Kitchen, which I've already made an order. Oh yeah, by the way, JP, you're gonna have to pick that up later. So
Send them
like
out.
there are different options if we try to get a little more creative and maybe even look a little more local, which is kind of always like a win anyways for the environment.
It's
So
the
like
idea, yeah.
Google your city plus CSA, community supported agriculture, seems to be a good option. Your city plus like meal prep companies or produce delivery, like there are still some options, and locally Sprout seems to be doing a pretty good job as well of keeping most things like restocking, at least. That man, they are getting after
Yeah.
it.
There's also, I mean, I don't know, depending on the area that everyone watching or you're in as well,
Yeah.
we have some farms too that do
Yeah.
still follow the same practices and are still, they might not be at farmers markets because of the gatherings and things like
Yeah.
that, but they're still allowing people to go in and pick up meat or
Yeah.
produce. Obviously, weather permitting, especially down here in Montreal, it's not really, you're not getting amazing produce fresh right
Yeah.
now, but you can get still some things.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing to do. And then once you kind of figure out where you can get your food from, whether it's a delivery service or a farm or your grocery stores are still intact and you can still go buy stuff, well, now we can start talking about the planning.
Yeah,
So what
exactly.
do we mean by planning?
So we were thinking about how best to kind of bring this to you guys in a way that you can take it from this quick conversation and just execute. And so the 3-part series that we're gonna roll through in this week is just kind of like the 3 steps of like having food planned, acquired, and prepped for good, like for at least a week at a time, right? So today we're digging into what are you actually putting on your list? Like how are you putting
Mm-hmm.
together the grocery list? And it really should emulate what you put on your plate. So ideally, the system that we're going to kind of show you guys today will show you exactly like what you're going to do in terms of putting your plate together. And when we were collabing, we're like, all right, what do you do with your clients? What do you do with my clients? Like super similar, interestingly enough. So we thought that maybe one of the
Oh,
most helpful things to do would be to do our own weekly planning and grocery list here with you guys, and you guys can literally follow along. So like if you guys want to go ahead and grab like something to write on, piece of paper, a pen,
yeah.
whatever, like I'll have you kind of jump off here first, James, and kind of give like maybe the basic overview of what we're going to do.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So number one thing with planning, a lot of people when they think of like planning and prep, they're thinking of, I mean, the first words that come into the minds of my clients when I talk about prep is like, oh, I don't want to cook all my food at the beginning of the week. But that's not what we're talking about doing. We just want you to know what you're going to be consuming, and that way
Yeah.
you know what to buy, how much you need of it, and then how the week is going to progress. Because a lot of people will just find themselves in a situation where they get home from work, or in this case, you're at home, you're hungry, nothing is prepared yet. So what do you do? Do you have the means and you have the food available to start making a meal, or
Yeah.
are you just gonna kind of cop out and order Uber Eats or do something like that?
Well,
So, yeah.
support that local biz.
Ooh, I like that. Did you see the question over there,
Yeah,
Christina,
the
with the snack attack? We'll,
Christina's.
we'll
Yeah,
definitely
I
get
saw
into
that.
that.
We'll try and jump on that
That
for
that's super
sure.
good.
Okay.
But let's talk about kind of like how I go about prepping, especially for
Yeah.
grocery lists. I'm super boring when it comes down to my nutrition, but the thing is that you can have many different things that you can do. So we're talking about some things that we like to do with our clients, which happen to be the same thing, which is basically creating some columns, and just one that's entirely proteins, one that's entirely fruits and vegetables, one that's
Mhm.
starchy vegetables or other starchy grains, and
Mhm.
then our fats.
Boom.
So what we would do with that is basically just list out the things that you enjoy eating on a regular basis, and that way you can figure out what you can build without being super boring about it, okay? Like
Yeah.
I am, because I'm going to have the same thing all the time, but I'm going to expand for you guys today. I'm going to make it seem like I'm super wild and exciting, and we're going to get into something. Just
Perfect.
pretend.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Instagram. I can pretend to be whoever I
You
want to be
can
right now.
totally pretend. But to that point, I mean, this is a conversation I have with people all the time. And I'll talk about this on Instagram as well in some posts. Like the whole myth of variation. We think
Mm,
that we want variation. Like everybody thinks that. And once they realize that there can be variation within like some structure, it's unbelievable how much energy it frees up as far as like not knowing where your next meal is going to be, and like then you're like thinking like what sounds amazing right now. It's like how much time do you spend
yeah.
thinking about like what am I going to order on Uber Eats? Like not that I can relate to that at all.
It's like between trying to decide what you want to order
Yeah.
and trying to decide what you want to watch on Netflix, you
Oh,
essentially don't eat or watch anything.
don't even exactly.
So,
And it's like the once clients make that plunge of like okay, we're just going to try it. We're going to see what it looks like to have some kind of structure and some options so that they walk in the door from work or they go to the kitchen from, their computer, and it's already there. It's unbelievable how much energy that frees up. Like, it's so cool. And then they actually are like, oh, I actually like food again. It's dope. So
yeah.
why don't we start like you and I literally like, let's start with the protein column and let's see what variation we can get even between you and me. Like I'm literally going to put together my list for next week.
Cool. Let's do it. I'll
All
do
right.
that right now.
All right. You jump off. What's your first
Okay.
protein? What are you doing?
So I'm gonna create my little columns over here. We're gonna do it live for you guys right now.
So live.
So here's one thing that I don't want people to fall into is the idea that if you decide to choose like chicken or something for your protein, that there's only one kind. Remember that like no matter what you choose, there are different cuts you can get. And with that effect, you can also make different recipes with it. So when it comes down to, let's say, chicken, which is a staple in our house over here, usually I'll split it up into chicken thighs, chicken breast. So that's how I start to make my columns because they are different. Then I'll get into my ground meats, which usually I'll do beef, lamb, veal, chicken, pork. I'll have a whole bunch of different types of ground meats because, again, those are really easy to create meals in a pinch, whether you just want to brown the meat and cook it with something else, make burger patties, turn it into a chili, do some stuff like that. It's a fantastic thing to have on hand. Afterwards, just different cuts of beef usually I'll have, so types of steaks and things like that will be usually easy to get. Fish, super easy for us to get over
it sounds
here.
like you guys have really good access to that.
We have access to a lot of really good stuff. So usually we'll try to get fish in, and just your standard, your salmon, trout. We'll do cod sometimes, some whitefish there, bass, depending on the availability of it. You don't necessarily, depending on where you're at, you could be super careful about getting wild caught versus farmed. But there are some places that have really good standards, especially in Canada. We're pretty lucky. We have really good standards for farmed fish, and they're actually a lot more sustainable for the environment. So it's actually way more sustainable to a certain extent. That, and then finally, my last column for proteins, which honestly wasn't me thinking about this, was actually Mena, my girlfriend, thinking about this all the time, is frozen shrimp. Or frozen scallops, things like that, that are super easy in a pinch to basically defrost and get cooked within minutes. So that's another really good thing to have on hand. So those are my proteins.
Those are already, like, when people are like, oh gosh, like you can't think of it almost. It's like you can't think of options, but you listed off like a ton of them, which as far as I'm aware are still available in our area at least. And having that extra variation, like maybe chicken is harder to find if you're going to like a general grocery store right now, but like there's bound to be at least 3 of those options that you just listed. And that's really
that's
similar.
Exactly good. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Sorry to interrupt you, but you know what I was mentioning to some of my clients too is that a lot of times we'll do 3 options that you're going to have on a regular basis, but generally leave yourself 1 or 2 options that you can have in a pinch. Like those the frozen seafood, whereas it's still pretty good for you. I don't have it very often, but I will have it on hand just in case that one of those main 3s that most of us eat, because most of us eat about the same thing all the time. Usually those 3, if one of those isn't available, then at least you have your backups.
Exactly. And so to kind of provide, you know, alternative options, right? For example, my list is going to be ground turkey. Like I almost always have ground turkey. I'm going to do chicken thighs because there's a lot of skin on, bone in chicken thighs available right now at the grocery stores that we've noticed. And those things are just epic in an air fryer. If you don't have an air fryer, I don't know what to tell you. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of different ways to cook it, guys. Just kind of on the air fryer train right now. We're going to be doing egg whites and eggs. I do egg whites in my oatmeal, but I make sure to eat eggs as well to get egg yolk in there because it's dope. And then my other 2 will be a ground beef, probably 85-15, because it's really hard to find 90-10 right now. And whey protein is always my contingency backup for protein because, like, I'll do the super smoothie, like, boom. Yeah, right.
You got like a bodybuilding list.
Dude. I get my fat from avocados. So that's gonna be my list, right? And that'll give me a bunch of different options to put together. So let's move on. Veggies and fruit. We're kind of like doubling up that list a little bit. Veggies and fruit. Whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna double up. But veggies, nutrients. We need it. Micronutrients. We need all those things. Again, it's gonna protect against corona. Trigger.
Oh, God.
Okay.
People might not know you're joking.
I'm joking. I am 100% joking, by the way. You should still eat healthy, but just stay indoors. That's going to be your best bet. So I'm going to put a disclaimer. All right, so for veggies, super simple. I like to have primarily green for the most part, just because they tend to be more fibrous vegetables that are easier to get in. So my standards, or my staples rather, would be broccoli, green beans, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage. Cabbage is a funky one because you can have it raw, or you can see the smiling already. You can have it raw, or you can have it cooked. Yeah, that's it. So we get triggered about different things. When we were in Costa Rica together, we ate a lot of cabbage. Is Ben watching? Because Ben's gonna lose it.
No,
Is he not
Ben's
watching?
got more important things to do.
Yeah, he's not watching us. Yeah, so for me, cabbage is absolutely fine. I can have it
Yeah.
nonstop. But for some people, it doesn't work too well. So you just got to be careful with certain things like that. And if that's the case, maybe cooking it might be a little bit easier for you
Yeah.
to digest.
Break it down a little.
So those are my staple vegetables. I do like to have a category of raw vegetables to eat too, like cucumbers or bell peppers,
Oh
carrots,
yeah,
tomatoes,
for
things like
sure.
that. I know tomatoes are fruit, but bear with me. And then apart from that, my fruits are super simple. Berries, blackberries, blueberries,
Yep.
raspberries, bananas, and apple. That's
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
What do you
And
got?
ours are pretty similar. So the adjustments that I'll make is I do have that threshold for FODMAP foods. And if you're not
Mm,
familiar with that, guys, it's just foods that can kind of cause some upset in the small intestine ferment a little bit. So I have to be a little bit careful about like going ham on broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and stuff. So I eat a crap ton of zucchini. Like I feel really, really good on zucchini. So
nice.
zucchini is always on my list. Bell peppers are generally on my list. Bell peppers and onions I kind of count together because I almost always eat them together. I don't know why,
Sure.
but that's where we're at. Spinach, mixed greens because I'll do a lot of big ass salads at times. It's one of my favorite foods.
Big ass salads.
Yeah, and then this week will be sprouts. I'll do some broccoli sprouts that I'll put in my super smoothies because they have very minimal taste, tons of nutrients. And
Solid.
my fruits are always going to be berries, like mostly blueberries. Raspberries suck, so like I'll never get raspberries. Blech. And then oranges, bananas, and plums. I don't know. I just really hate them.
That's, blah.
I got triggered. So that's my list of foods, and that'll be put together in
Yeah.
whether they're cooked on the side with some protein and starch, or all together in a super smoothie, or all together in very few things I won't put in a super smoothie. All together in a hot meal, like that's how I'll roll with it.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. By the way, I'm just going to take this time in between to mention to you guys, because I know people are going to be jumping in and out, but we actually have some resources, some planning kits and things like
Yes,
that
yes,
we are
yes. Good
actually going to
point.
send out to you guys.
Yep.
So if you can't stay for the whole time, that's absolutely fine. Just drop in your email, like DM one of us if you have us on Instagram.
Yep.
Send us your emails. We also have our newsletter. The link is in my bio.
Yeah.
I believe the same thing for you.
Mine too. Yeah. If you
Um,
get on my main website, for sure, drop it on
That's
there.
it. We're going to be sending these PDF resources to you guys to help you out with a little bit of the situation after the talk. Okay.
Yeah, as well as the recording of this call. So like if you can't
As
hang
well as
on
the
for a
recording. Yeah,
while,
absolutely.
like call and
Yeah.
resources.
You can
Free
listen
stuff
before you
is
go to bed. It's
cool.
absolutely, yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yes, James's voice is super calming. It'll really
The
relax you
radio
before you go to
voice.
sleep tonight. That's what I
Thank you
tell him.
for
It's like
tuning
you
in.
sound off. All right, next category.
All right,
We're
moving
getting
on.
weird on them.
Moving on. Cool.
Starch. Starch. Talk
Starch,
about
yeah.
starch,
So
James.
super simple. Your starches, right? So your higher quantities of carbohydrates in a little package. Grains are an easy bet. I usually go for the same kind of jasmine rice as my
Yeah,
go-to.
'cause you have to
If
eat a
Dean is
lot,
still
right?
on here, he got me off of basmati rice just from his pure hatred of it. So I don't have it anymore, just because in solidarity.
Progressive.
Yeah, that's basically all it is.
Progressive.
But jasmine rice is my go-to.
Yeah.
So that, and then besides that, just sweet potato, regular potato. That's
Okay.
usual starches for me.
Cool. Yeah, and I will almost always have frozen cooked sweet potato. It's something that
Mm.
I can cook up really easily as well as put in my super smoothies. That is a hack that Ben gave me a few years ago, which has just like been epic and smooth. I mean, it has like a
Bam.
hint of sweetness, but it makes it creamy and it sticks longer. Anyways, I freaking love it. So all the clients that I get on it are like, what? Like what? And then they do it and they're like, wow, that was legit. So I'll almost always have frozen sweet potatoes, which has been very hard to find lately. So I might actually have to cook sweet potatoes, which is super annoying.
Yeah, there's actually
Fortunately, I have
some
an air
groceries.
fryer.
Actually, I just want to get in on this. Actually, we found out too that there are some grocery stores that are also, remember, they're going to be limiting certain things that you can get. So frozen
Yeah.
veggies might be one of those things that they limit per customer. So keep that in
Yeah.
mind when you're building your grocery list.
Yeah. So I have to use my air fryer, which will be amazing because it will do such a great job because the air fryer is amazing. So sweet potatoes is on my list, as well as jasmine rice. Super easy thing that I might actually have to cook for real now because I normally get frozen jasmine rice, but I think we're like super stocked up on a
Frozen
few
jasmine
bucks.
rice?
Yeah, it's like I don't understand why you would cook it from scratch because you can just get like the already cooked frozen, dump it in a pot with a little bit of coconut oil and bone broth, and then it's like done in 7 minutes. But I don't know.
Okay,
If it
so
can be done
and if you're not a
easily,
hippie, you can also use a rice cooker,
but you have
which
a
is
rice
one
cooker,
button.
James.
It's yeah, that's true. I would get a rice cooker. It's like $14, 14 Canadian dollars at Walmart. So if you're in the States, that's basically free. And what you do is you just kind of get it and you put your rice and you put your water and you click a button and then you just leave. And then it somehow miraculously cooks your rice.
Sounds
and then you just get it.
complicated.
I mean,
We've already argued about this. Might have to do it though. Didn't realize it was free. So I'll have to look into getting a free rice cooker. Perfect. So
use the code
Jasmine
TOG10 for 10% off your rice cookers.
I'm so dead.
All right, keep going.
Jasmine
Keep
rice is
rolling.
always on my list too. And as well as some other kind of like maybe regular potato, because I used to be scared of regular potatoes. Hashtag paleo life. But they actually have a lot of nutrients in them. It's super crazy how they can be good for you. And then I'll generally go for plantains. I freaking love frying up plantains, although it's been a minute, but that one's on my list because I think they're at the store. I like frying them in a little bit of coconut oil and then sprinkling with salt. And I want to taste Costa Rica again. And then I'll have some kind of like whole grain or generally gluten-free bread because I'm wild and I live on the edge.
Damn, that's fine. That's cool. I actually didn't put gluten-free bread in my. I didn't put it in my list, but I do use it actually quite a bit. It's super solid.
We have a really good brand here.
Years.
We have like a really good brand here. It's called Canyon Bakehouse, and it's just like it's dope. It's very, very good.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Those are my starches. What are your fats?
So we'll move on to fats. Yeah, so this is the final column. So for those of you guys who are kind of just jumping in, when we're planning out, because this talk is just going to be on the planning stuff, we are going to get into the crazier stuff in the next 2 talks on Tuesday and Thursday, which is going to be fun. You might see me get triggered about something. But it's just about it's just about grocery lists for today and how to plan ahead, especially in these times where we don't know if things are going to go on further lockdown for everyone over here. So just making sure that you're planning ahead and you know what you need. So yes, we did proteins, we did our veggies and fruits, we did our starches, the average ones. Now moving on to fats. Fats for me is an interesting column just because you tend to. Oh, I love my rice cookie. See that? Montreal represent.
I was gonna be like.
There you go. We can end this right here.
Oh my God, I'm dead.
So when it comes down to fats, it's an interesting one just because the fats are going to be pretty much in, thank you. The fats are going to be pretty much based in oils and things like that. So like your, coconut oil, avocado oil, and grapeseed oil are what I use a lot, as well as just, avocado or nuts. But a lot of times, depending on the avocado or nuts. Avocado?
So not avocado. Avocado
specifically. It's a maybe.
I've been waiting
it's a different
for
one.
At least one difference in Canadian language.
One Canadian.
That's amazing.
I didn't say hey at all during this entire.
Hey, it's not too late.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can.
It's not too late. We could still do it at the end of the day. Somewhere Ben just got a headache.
We're like getting ADD.
Back on track. So, so I usually use those. The one thing about the fats, though, to understand also is that you tend to cook with a lot of these things. You tend to get fats in without even really knowing it. Yeah. So when we're building meal plans, which we might do later on, we might start to talk about our recipes, just keep in mind that fats are going to be super important because you're going to be using them a lot, most likely in cooking. Yep. But they can get out of hand real quick if you start using it in, like with nuts and things like that, where you're just kind of getting them in without realizing them, which is what Christina brought up in the comments about the snack attack. We got to be careful with those.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are your fats?
And that's such a good point, and something that will come up with clients a ton is because, like, we need fat. Like, it's really, really important. There's amazing benefits and nutrients in fat sources, but it's also just to be aware that it's very easy to consume on it, which, hashtag paleo life, almond butter for days. So let's see here. So my fat options are also super basic. Like I generally will keep oils on hand. Like I'll always have an extra virgin olive oil. I'll always have like coconut oil, and I'll kind of alternate cooking with them or making salad dressings with like the extra virgin olive oil. Generally more cooking with coconut oil or with grass-fed butter. And then avocado. I try to get the majority of my fat from avocado because of the fiber content. And as females, just because like we generally females have slightly smaller bumpers than guys, right? Like we're not eating quite as much as dudes. And I have to watch my fiber intake because I'm maybe not getting quite as much fiber from a lot of like the fibrous cruciferous veggies. So that's just something that I'm aware of personally, is that I want to get avocado is an amazing fiber source. So I try to get a lot of my fat from that. And I will I'll totally bang on some nuts sometimes. Like I'll get some Brazil nuts, I'll get some almonds, but not a ton. So it's either the oils, avocados, or nuts. I just totally cracked him up like so bad saying that. That wasn't planned. So those are my fat sources. Oh my God.
Those are
Yeah,
awesome.
that's amazing. All right.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. And like you said, right, there are a lot of really good fat sources. A lot of people have it a little bit on edge
Christina.
because from, yeah, I saw this Christina too. I'm going to get it in at the end, you'll see. So yeah, so
Keep
basically
going.
the fat sources are fantastic for a lot of you guys. You just got to keep in mind that there's a higher calorie content with fats, like over double what it is for protein and carbohydrates. So just be careful when you're over consuming on those, which, I mean, if it's something you guys want to talk about, we can definitely do in a later talk as well.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into some of this stuff a little bit more deeply later on in the week.
Yeah. If you guys have
And then
questions as we go throughout, like just drop them. If we don't cover them in this talk, we'll cover them in the next one. But like,
we'll
seriously,
cover them
hit
in
us with
next,
it
yeah.
for sure. Okay.
And our final category, which is basically the fun one, which is our other.
We're so wild.
Wait,
We're so
the
wild.
other
You're not
category.
wild at all. What are yours?
Mine, mine is like a fucking zero. I don't know if I can swear on this, but I will anyways.
Yeah.
Mine is a 0-calorie sparkling water from San Pellegrino. They make this like Essenzo one, which is the one that I like. It's like black
You're
cherry
so
and
crazy.
pomegranate, which is super wild, 0 calories. But full disclosure, the one thing that I do have a bit of an obsession with that I do write into my plans is popcorn.
Popcorn. Oh my
It's
God, you're
absolutely,
so crazy.
yeah, man.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
mine is
that's
Zevia.
it.
I have like a problem with Zevia, so like the Zevia Cola or like the grapefruit one. It's just like I don't know. I'll deal with that one day. I'll do in the other column Siggy's yogurt as well. Siggy's are Icelandic skyr, which can kind of go in the protein column, to be honest, to some
It's a
extent.
mix, right? It's protein
Yeah,
and fat in there.
yeah, and I generally will get kind of the higher fat content ones regardless, just because they taste better and my tummy likes them. So, and I got the room for it. I'll also
Hmm.
get oat milk, which is a source of calcium for me and goes in my super smoothie. And then flax seeds. So I'll put flax seeds like in a smoothie or in my oatmeal. And then finally, like I'll be honest with you guys, like I got some gluten-free cookies in the mix for sure. We going wild.
Nice,
Those
nice.
double chocolate chip gluten-free by Immaculate Baking Company plug. Not even
Plug.
a big chocolate person. I'm not. I'm like not huge in chocolate, but that stuff is fire. Like it's so good. Like, or I
Damn.
mean,
All
for
right.
me personally, like planning and knowing the stuff like that I'm gonna consume, just because I have a history of like going nuts out, like over
Hmm.
restricting and then snacking slash binging to some extent, just because I didn't have a lot of organization around this part of my life, and what it took me years and years to realize is that number one, most of the time when I had those episodes, I was just hungry, so that's
Yeah,
cool. Try eating. That's a super helpful thing.
it helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and number two is just like it's like a boredom availability thing, Like you have to understand where you are. You have to just without being too cliche, like know thyself. If you know that you have a really hard time moderating certain foods, it doesn't make sense at that stage in your life to have them widely available for you at home. So if you're kind of at
Mm.
home during this time and you're noticing like the snacking's out of control and like you're going nuts on some of this stuff, number one, rule out the simple. Make sure you're not just hungry. Like, don't say that you can't have that food. Go eat a meal, balance it with protein, with starch, with veggie, with fat. Just like let yourself eat some food, see how you feel after. If you still want those foods, whatever. Like, who cares? Like, enjoy some of the foods. But consider that maybe at this point in your kind of process, it might not be very helpful to have so much of that available in your house. So try to, maybe like don't get quite as much of that stuff. And that's generally
Yeah.
as far as I'll go when it comes to having those conversations, just because a lot of that stuff can kind of run a little bit deeper. And I don't know if you have any additional thoughts about that, James.
I mean, yeah, it gets a little bit tough for a lot of people, the snacking, and now I'm glad we're finally getting to it. But it is tough for a lot of people to kind of deal with snacking in the day,
Yeah.
especially because there's so much conflicting information of like, oh, it doesn't. The more meals you have, the better. The less meals you have, the better.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. It kind of comes down to the calories you're eating at the end of the day. And now is going to be a really interesting time to really look in yourself when it comes down to snacking, because for those of you guys who are going to be home for an extended period of time, it is super easy to get bored, not have something to
Yeah.
do, and seek stimulation through food,
Yeah.
right? And
100%.
I guarantee you that everyone has been there. Everyone has been to a point where they don't even know that they're hungry. They just want to do something. So you're kind of
Yeah.
going back, and I've done it like my entire life, of just going back from the fridge to the pantry, to the fridge, to the pantry,
Yeah.
just kind of looking for something, like something new is going to be in there, right? The snacking is tough. It's very easy for it to get out of hand. But if you do it properly, let's say, like you just said, if you have a meal, let's say if you have to just wait 30 minutes or an hour for lunch, like, let's be honest, stick it out and
Yeah.
have your full meal and then decide afterwards if you're hungry. If you
Yeah.
still are, then it's your decision if you want to go for it or not. I mean, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, no one is going to be there scolding you if you do
Yeah.
something. And
Exactly.
it's not even to say that anything is bad either, right? You just do what you got to do. If you feel good about it,
Agreed.
then go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the thing is like think about the last time you had just like a really solid meal and you had like a
Mm.
really good portion of protein and it was well seasoned and you had like vegetable and starch. Like you ate enough food. Like how really hungry were you after that? Like how much really
Yeah.
did you want a snack? And so that's usually the first tactic I'll go to for people is because it's like if you're intentionally or unintentionally, I should say, under consuming, which is so common, James. I'm sure you see this as often as I do.
Oh my
Like
God. Yeah,
people,
yeah,
like when people are being intentional about it, they eat very little, and then they're like, "It's the craziest thing. I went to dinner." Or like Friday night came around and I had like an entire pizza and ice cream. I'm like, dude, you're hungry. Like you're not broken. Okay,
yeah.
first of
Yeah.
all, it's
Just not
these
eating enough.
beautiful protective measures that your body and your brain have in place, like as a form of defense, right? So that's where I'll always go first. I'm like, let's just like make sure you're not hungry. And then if you're still having like those kinds of episodes, great. Like you want to get connected with someone who can help you with that because it's a little bit of a deeper, thing that
It's
is a
tough.
lot of our
It
stuff. Yeah,
absolutely is tough. Yeah. You know what?
absolutely.
Getting to wrap your head around the fact that a lot of times you have to eat more than you think you are
It's
in order to
hard.
lose weight
Yeah,
is
super
kind of
mental.
odd to think about it. But keep in mind, like you said before, your body's just trying to keep you alive as best as possible. So
Yeah,
you're going to have checks and balances everywhere. If food is available to you and you're in this kind of state where you're still craving more food, you're going to eat it.
yeah,
Like there's no two ways
absolutely.
about it, and that's why we talk a lot about starting with the planning and understanding what you're going to eat first, because it
Yeah,
avoids. So my pet peeve in this, what the situation I try to avoid as best as possible with my clients is the end of the world situation, which is funny right now, but end of
I
the
was
world
like, what?
situation, which is basically where they come into my office or we chat online, and they didn't really eat the meals they were supposed to be eating, or they didn't prep adequately enough, so they ended up in this situation where they're
Yeah,
starving, they have nothing available, and
yeah,
the rationalization for it to me is, well, it's not the end of the world if I eat X, Y, or Z, right? And
yeah,
like, no, it's the world will not physically end if you go to McDonald's. I understand that, but you understand that you put yourself in the situation because of a lack of foresight and planning,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
everyone is able to do. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult for some people, which is perfect. I mean, if it
Yeah,
doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, and that's kind of what you and I want to do with these talks, right? Is we want to give everyone the ability to understand how to plan things out, how to shop for it, and then how to
yeah,
create good diet strategies.
yeah. So, and that kind of like brings us full circle, I would say, because
Yeah.
this has been really fun. James and I could talk about this stuff for literally ever, but I think we're both in agreement that we want you guys to have something very actionable to take away from this right now. So, right
Hmm.
now, what it looks like for you guys is getting, whether it's electronic or a piece of paper, making 4 columns. And in your first column, you're putting, all right, 4 to 5 protein options and maybe an extra backup in case you go to the store and one of them isn't there.
Yeah.
Same thing in the
Love it.
veggies. I mean, go nuts on the veggies. Fresh produce, from what I can understand, is still pretty available. And if we're not dealing with actual shortages, like, you're good, fam. Like,
Yeah.
we'll change this if anything changes, but, like
Yeah.
put 6 to 8 options there, ones that you'll
Hmm.
eat. This is what James talked about before we jumped on this call. Ones that that you'll eat, ones that, are pretty solid, maybe go a little nutso, and then ones that are just like your backup options, perhaps.
Yeah.
Starches, so starchy carbs, great. Like 2 to 3, probably. You're probably good. If you want another one, great, go nuts. But those generally might be a little bit easier to find, maybe. Like potatoes are pretty solid. Rice is
Yeah.
pretty available.
Yeah.
And then fats. I mean, I usually only have to shop for avocados because, like, you buy a big thing of oil and it's going to be around for a while. So,
Absolutely.
and then whatever you need to include that is fun for you. Try to avoid the idea of like, oh my God, I gotta go nutso and everything has to be perfect and clean. Like include some foods that are fun and enjoyable. Get those chicken
Yeah.
nuggets, man. I'm like chicken nugget life, okay? Because you have room for it. Imagine if you start eating balanced meals, with these 3 to 4 categories, like 3 times a day. You don't think that you have room for like some fun meals? Like that's wacky, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny when we see that, and you see that with a lot of people where once they finally start getting the nutrition order and start working on different things, and, you know, on top of the training, obviously, or on
Yeah.
top of the eating training and doing things like that, you'll reach this point of metabolic flexibility, which I'm not going to get into now, but it's essentially, and this is we're on time, we're already running past. Which is essentially you getting to this point where you can eat your regular meals as you would normally, and then if an opportunity presents itself, you can eat what you feel like. A lot of people ask me if I have a cheat day, and I don't really have a cheat day. I just kind of eat how I'd like to eat because it's so standard throughout the week. I know how much I'm consuming. So if we go out for dinner and I decide to have something, it's kind of guilt-free at that point.
Exactly. I used to hate people who talked about that. It was so annoying to me because I walked that fine razor line of like, even any slight deviation in my plan just felt like it led me to disaster. But now it's very, very cool to see people come into, you know, when I work with them, and I'm sure when they work with you, like the whole objective for a lot of my people is I want them to be able to go out to eat and enjoy it. Because that's a kind of a value for me. And that's a value for a lot of people that come in. Like they want to be able to have that freedom. I love going out to eat at restaurants. And I love even more being able to go out to eat and not feel like crap afterwards. And to know that like this is actually kind of part of my plan. It's a very, very cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little shot at you there.
Nicole, I'm triggered.
There's something there that I don't know about.
So triggered, Brie. If there's only veggie you could find anywhere is beets. I
Beets,
don't
Bears,
enjoy
Battlestar Galactica.
I don't enjoy beets very much. And like I think last year, Nicole? I just like asked for a lot of suggestions from people because I really needed to start eating some beets. I forget why. They still taste like dirty socks to me.
Okay.
But yes, I will try it with the lime and salt option that someone gave me because that actually sounded like maybe the acidity could like really break it down a little. Beets all day. I wish they're so good for you guys. I need to eat it more, I guess. But all right, where we at?
I think we're basically good. I think we're good. Yeah. So this is what's going down, guys. For those of you who stuck with it the whole way, congratulations. You managed to hear both of us talk and not want to close your phone. This is good.
Oh my God,
good job. For those of you guys who are jumping in, today was just on planning and grocery lists. We're going to get into more details as we go. We have 2 other talks specifically on this, which could get expanded if you guys are really down. Another one on Tuesday and another one on Thursday. We'll send out that info. And if you guys want to be in the loop with this stuff and receive the handouts that we're going to give based off of this talk along with the recording, jump onto both of our email lists. Mine is in my bio. Bree's is in her bio as well.
You can choose one of us, and we'll just see who's the favorite.
You can choose one of them. Let's do it. Let's go competition mode, baby. Dallas versus Montreal.
Choose either one. It doesn't matter.
Choose either one. Or send a DM, or both. Or send a DM to one of us with your email addresses. If you don't feel like doing all the sign up, I'll do the hard work for you. So will Bree. And we'll pop you in on that email list and send you guys the information based off of that.
Perfect. Yep. And then just stay tuned to our Instagrams. We'll announce when that stuff happens. But you'll get all the goodies via email. All right, my man. You're getting all the love. This is so
I'm getting a ton of love. It's because they're in quarantine right now. I know this. What's up, guys?
So good.